There is a silence inside you that everyone around can sense, yet pretends not to notice. It is a specific kind of silence. It is not peace. It is not calm. It is that pause before the question you never ask out loud. What if I were completely alone? What if nobody else cared? What if I disappeared and the world kept spinning as if I had never existed? This silence frightens you because you already know the answer. And Eckhart Tolle spent decades studying exactly this terror, not to eliminate it, but to walk through it to the other side. Because on the other side of that fear exists something that completely changed the trajectory of his life. And it can change yours too. But first, you need to understand why you were taught to be so afraid of it. When you were a child, loneliness was punishment. Being grounded in your room, being left out at recess, not being picked for the team. The message was clear. To be alone is to be wrong. To be alone is to fail. So you learned. You learned to fill every second of silence, to endlessly scroll the feed, to turn on the TV even without watching, to call someone, anyone, just to avoid hearing the echo of the empty room inside you. But have you noticed yet? The more you fill your life with people, with noise, with distraction, the emptier you feel. It's like trying to quench your thirst by drinking salt water. Every sip increases the thirst. Tolle calls this the phantom hunger. You are hungry for something you cannot name, so you try to satisfy it with everything within reach: relationships, achievements, likes, validation, status, and nothing, absolutely nothing fills it. Why? Because you are trying to fill the void with more forms. And the void is not an absence to be filled. It is a presence to be inhabited. This is the first reversal. You are not afraid of loneliness. You are afraid of what loneliness reveals. Imagine a completely empty room with white walls and a perfect echo. Now imagine that room is you, your mind without thoughts, your life without a social role, your identity without labels. What remains? Most people panic just thinking about it. Because when you remove everything you think you are, your job, your relationships, your accomplishments, your opinions, your memories, your plans, what is left? Tolle discovered the answer, the hardest way possible. At 29, he was on the verge of suicide, deep depression, chronic anxiety. One night he woke up at 3 in the morning with an obsessive thought hammering his mind. I can't live with myself anymore. And then something broke inside him. A question emerged from the despair. Wait, if I can't live with myself anymore, does that mean there are two of me? An I and a myself. Which one of the two am I? In that instant, something collapsed. The room inside him became completely empty, and for the first time in his life, he felt the presence of the inhabited silence. It was not absence, it was formless fullness. Have you ever had a moment where time stood still? Not because something extraordinary happened, but because for 1 second you forgot to be you. Forgot your story, your problems, your desires, and there was just presence. It might have been looking at the sky or listening to music, or in the midst of a physical movement. For a brief instant, the room was empty and you realized it was never empty. It was filled with something that had no name. Tolle spent months in that state after that night. He sat on park benches all day, just existing. People thought he was crazy, and maybe he was. Crazy enough to stop trying to be someone. And it was there, in the madness of the non-person, that he found the code. The code of solitude is not about being alone. It is about being complete without adding anything. It is about discovering that you were never separate from anything. You just believed you were. But how do you get there? How do you cross the terror of the void and discover the fullness on the other side? First, you need to stop running. Your entire life is structured as one big escape. You escape boredom with entertainment. You escape anxiety with work. You escape loneliness with relationships. You escape silence with constant thinking. But where are you running to? Tolle realized something frightening. You are not running from bad feelings. You are running from yourself, because somewhere along the way you learned that you are not good enough, that you need to be improved, upgraded, replaced by a better version. So you spend your whole life chasing this better version, without realizing you are running from the only real version. And loneliness? Loneliness is the moment when there is nowhere left to run. It's when all the doors close, and you are forced to look at the empty room inside you. Most people do everything to avoid this moment. That's why they pack their schedules. That's why they can't stand being without their phone for 5 minutes. That's why they jump from relationship to relationship, from project to project, from goal to goal. But have you noticed the pattern? No matter what you achieve, no matter how many people surround you, the feeling of emptiness always returns, like a tide, like an echo that won't stop reverberating. What if I told you that echo is the sound of your own presence trying to get your attention? There's a practice Tolle teaches that seems too simple to work, but it works because it directly attacks the mechanism of escape. You sit down, no music, no phone, no goal, and you feel the weight of your body, the texture of the air entering and leaving your lungs, the pulse of your heart. You feel what it means to be alive without doing anything with it, and the thoughts begin to scream. This is a waste of time. You have more important things to do. You are falling behind. You are so lonely. This isn't working. And you let the thoughts scream. You observe the echo in the empty room, and you realize the thoughts are just echoes. They are not you. You are the room. You are the space where the echoes happen. This is the second reversal. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that observes the thoughts. And when you realize this, truly realize it, not just intellectually understand it, something shifts. The fear of loneliness begins to dissolve, because you realize you were never alone. You were always accompanied by the only presence that matters, your own consciousness. But there is a deeper level still. Tolle speaks about something he calls the pain body. It is the layer of accumulated emotional suffering that you carry like a second skin. It's all the times you felt rejected, abandoned, unseen, unloved. This pain body is mortally afraid of solitude, because in solitude it cannot feed itself. It needs drama, conflict, toxic relationships, situations that confirm its narrative of "I am not good enough." So it keeps you in constant motion. It convinces you that you need more approval, more validation, more proof that you deserve to exist. And you obey. You contort yourself into shapes that are not yours. You perform versions of yourself that you think others will love. You hide the empty room because you fear that if someone enters there, they will see there is nothing special about you. But here is the truth the pain body does not want you to discover. The empty room is not empty. It is filled with the one thing you always wanted: fullness. Not the fullness of having, the fullness of being. And this fullness can only be felt in solitude. Because in solitude, you cannot pretend, you cannot perform, you cannot hide behind social masks. It is you and the inhabited silence. It is you and the naked truth of what it means to be alive. There is a moment in Tolle's journey that he describes as the portal. It is when you are in solitude, feeling the full weight of anxiety, fear, emptiness, and instead of running, you dive deeper. You go inside the fear. You feel it completely without resistance, without judgment. And what happens is impossible to describe in words, but I will try. The fear dissolves, not because you conquered it, but because you stopped fighting it. And when you stop fighting, you realize the fear was made of resistance. Without resistance, there is no fear. There is only sensation, there is only presence. And within this presence, you find something unexpected: power. Not the power to dominate others, not the power to conquer things, the power to be whole without needing anything external, the power to be sufficient, the power of pure presence. Tolle calls this the power of now. But it is not a concept. It is a visceral experience of being so completely present that the past and the future disappear. And with them, disappears all the suffering that comes from living in memories and fantasies. You are finally here, completely here, and here is never empty. But let's be honest, you won't wake up tomorrow and live permanently in this state. It took Tolle years. And even after decades, he says there are still moments when the mind tries to pull him back into the drama. The difference is that now he recognizes it. He sees the echoes starting to reverberate in the empty room and smiles, because he knows they are just echoes. The room remains the room, and you can begin to develop that same recognition. Start to notice when you are running, when you are filling the silence with noise just because you cannot bear the presence of the void. Every time you feel the compulsion to check your phone for no reason, that is the escape. Every time you enter a relationship just to avoid being alone, that is the escape. Every time you pack your schedule until there is no room left to breathe, that is the escape. And every time you notice the escape and choose to stop, even if only for 5 minutes, you are crossing the portal. You are entering the empty room. You are discovering the inhabited silence. There is a quote from Tolle that changed everything for me. Loneliness is created by the mind that says you need something external to be complete. Solitude is the state of being complete without needing anything. Do you understand the difference? Loneliness is suffering. It is the belief that you are incomplete, separate, isolated from the rest of existence. Solitude is freedom. It is the perception that you are complete, whole, connected to everything through the very consciousness that animates all things. And the path from loneliness to solitude passes through a very narrow door, the radical acceptance of what is, not of what should be, not of what you would like it to be, of what is. Are you alone right now? Accept it completely. Feel what it means. Do not try to change it. Do not try to fill it. Just be with it. Are you surrounded by people but feel lonely? Accept it completely. Feel the loneliness even in the midst of the crowd. Do not reject it. Do not judge it. Just be with it. And something miraculous happens in total acceptance. The accepted thing transforms. Loneliness turns into solitude. Emptiness turns into fullness. Fear turns into presence. But you have to cross over. There is no shortcut. Have you ever noticed how the most powerful people in the world, not in the sense of money or fame, but in the sense of presence, of impact, of authenticity, have something in common? They are comfortable with solitude, not because they are antisocial, but because they discovered that they don't need anyone to feel whole. And precisely because they don't need, they become magnetic. Because people sense when you are whole. They sense when you are not trying to suck energy from them, when you are not performing for approval, when you simply are. And that is the final irony. When you stop running from loneliness and discover solitude, you become less alone. Not because you need people, but because people naturally gravitate toward genuine presence. But that cannot be the reason. If you seek solitude to attract people, you have missed the point. Solitude is the end in itself. It is the discovery that you already have everything you ever wanted and always did. Tolle tells a story about a beggar sitting on a box. He spends years asking for alms to survive. One day, someone asks, "What's in that box you're sitting on?" The beggar had never looked. When he opens it, he discovers it is full of gold. You are the beggar. The box is your own consciousness. And you spend your whole life asking for crumbs of validation, of love, of meaning, without realizing you are sitting on top of an infinite treasure. Loneliness is the moment when you finally look inside the box. But there is fear. Because what if you look and there is nothing? What if the box is empty? Here is the secret Tolle took years to understand. The fear of the empty box is the ego's last protection. Because the ego knows that when you look inside and discover the gold, it loses all power. The ego lives on lack, on "I don't have enough," on "I need to become somebody," on "I'm not good as I am." And presence, pure consciousness, is absolute fullness. It is "I am already everything." It is "there is nothing to become." It is "I am complete exactly as I am." So the ego creates 1,000 distractions to keep you looking outward, to keep you dependent on external things. Because the day you discover you don't need anything external to be complete, the ego loses the game. And that day can be today. Let's do something together now. Something that will seem simple, but is not. Stop for a moment. Feel the air in your lungs, feel the weight of your body. Now feel the space around you, not visually, but energetically. The space that surrounds you. Now feel the space inside you, between the thoughts, between the breaths, between the heartbeats. Do you notice there is space in you? And that space is not empty, it is vibrating with presence, with consciousness, with life. That space is you, not the you that has a name, a story, problems. The you that existed before all that. The you that was here when you were born and will be here when you die. That you is never alone, because that you is the very source of connection. It is what connects everything. Tolle discovered this on the darkest night of his life, and since then, he has tried to point to it in 1,000 different ways. Because you can't teach it, you can only point and hope you look. But here is the trick. You cannot force it. You cannot make solitude happen. Because all doing is from the mind. And solitude is what remains when the mind stops doing. It's like trying to fall asleep. The harder you try, the more awake you stay. Sleep comes when you stop trying, when you surrender. Solitude is the same. It comes when you stop trying to fill the void, when you stop trying to become someone special, when you simply allow things to be as they are. And yes, that is scary. Because you have been conditioned your whole life to believe that you are your efforts, that you are your progress, that you are your success. But what if you are none of that? What if you are the awareness that observes all of it, the empty room where everything happens? Then your worth does not depend on achievements, your completeness does not depend on relationships, your peace does not depend on circumstances. You are the peace, you are the completeness, you are the worth. And no one can take that from you, because it is not something you have, it is what you are. Tolle spent years sitting in silence before he started teaching. People asked what he was doing. He said, "I watched the world arise and disappear." What kind of answer is that? It is the answer of someone who discovered that the world, with all its dramas, its urgencies, its crises, is just a wave in the ocean of consciousness. And he learned to be the ocean. You can learn too. But first you have to stop identifying with the waves. Stop thinking that you are the story your mind tells. Stop believing that you are the character in the drama. You are not the character. You are the stage where the drama happens. And the stage is never affected by the drama. When you understand this, not intellectually but viscerally, loneliness becomes impossible, because you realize you are connected to everything through the same consciousness that animates all things. The tree outside is you. The sky is you. The person next to you is you. Not in the sense that you are the same person, but in the sense that the same presence inhabits all forms. And when you feel that, even for an instant, you understand what Tolle means when he says that you are the universe experiencing itself. But let's bring this down to earth, to the daily life. Because all this sounds beautiful philosophically, but how do you live it? You start small. You start by stopping for 5 minutes a day and just feeling what it means to be alive. No goal, no productivity, just presence. And you will notice something. The mind will resist. It will say this is a waste of time. It will create urgencies. It will generate anxiety. Because the mind is terrified of being unemployed. And when you are in pure presence, the mind is unemployed. But you persist, not because you are trying to achieve something, but because you are practicing non-achieving. You are practicing being sufficient, and gradually something begins to change. You realize you don't have to check your phone every 5 minutes. You realize you can be in silence without discomfort. You realize that the company of your own presence is more gratifying than any distraction. And then you start choosing solitude. Not because you are running from people, but because you have discovered a treasure that exists only in silence, a kind of joy that does not depend on external reasons, a peace that needs no justification. Tolle speaks about the quantum leap, the moment you stop living through the mind and start living through presence. It is not gradual, it is sudden, like waking up from a dream. 1 second, you are identified with all your thoughts, your emotions, your history. The next second, you realize that all of that is just content appearing in consciousness, and you are the consciousness, not the content, and everything changes. Not because your circumstances have changed, but because you are no longer a prisoner of them. The bad job no longer defines who you are. The complicated relationship no longer determines your worth. The bank account no longer measures your success, because you have discovered something that cannot be taken, cannot be conquered, cannot be lost. The presence of being. And that presence feels like love. Not love for something, just love as a state of being. Love without object. And when you are in that state, even for moments you realize you were never alone, because love is the fundamental nature of consciousness. And you are consciousness. But there is one last portal, one last fear. The fear that if you dive totally into presence, you will lose your life, that you will become passive, that you will achieve nothing, that you will become useless. Tolle lived this fear. After the transformation, he spent months doing nothing. People thought he had gone crazy. And maybe he had. Crazy with presence. But then something started to flow through him, not from the mind, from presence. Actions started to happen, but effortlessly, without tension, without fear of failure. And he realized, the mind creates with effort. Presence creates with flow. The mind needs to plan, control, force. Presence just allows things to unfold. And what unfolds is always more intelligent, more elegant, more effective than what the mind could have planned. Because presence is connected to the intelligence of the universe, and the mind is only connected to the past. So you don't lose your life when you discover presence. You gain your life for the first time, You stop living on autopilot and start living in the flow. There is a silence inside you that everyone around can sense yet pretends not to notice. Remember that phrase. That's where we started. Do you understand what it truly means now? This silence is not emptiness. It is not absence. It is the fullest presence that exists. It is the inhabited room. It is the gold inside the box. And everyone around you senses when you are connected to this silence. They don't know what it is, but they feel it. They feel the peace. They feel the completeness. They feel the power of genuine presence. And they pretend not to notice because it confronts their conditioning, because it shows that it is possible to live in another way, a way that does not depend on constant escape. But you know now. You know that loneliness is not the enemy. It is the teacher, it is the portal, it is the way back home. And home is not a place. Home is a state of being. It is the feeling of being complete exactly where you are, exactly as you are, without needing to add anything, without needing to become anything, just being. And when you finally reach that state, even for brief moments, you understand what Tolle meant when he wrote, "You do not find peace by rearranging the circumstances of your life. You find peace by realizing who you are at the deepest level." The empty room inside you is waiting. The inhabited silence is calling. The gold is inside the box. But you have to stop begging for crumbs. You have to stop running. You have to sit on the box and finally look inside. And when you look, really look with courage, with surrender, you will discover what Tolle discovered that night at age 29. You were never alone. You were always complete. You were always pure presence. You just forgot. And solitude is the universe reminding you. It's time to remember. The silence is waiting, and it has always been full of you.